So this is, I have to confess, this is the first time in my life I've given a live coding session. I'm pretty nervous. Right before I came up here, I did some things. So maybe we'll work together and figure it out. I hope this has not been recorded. I guess it is. My son said he wanted me to practice last night. I have an 11-year-old son. He came over and he said, "You really should practice this." You know? And he said, "I want you to practice with me and the way it's going to be." And I said, "Don't dumb it down." Like, you know, he's coding now, so he's getting used to. I'm trying to get into Scala. He's doing some Python. So yeah, for a while I forbade Python in the house, but then the school insisted on it, and then that was kind of bad, like, you know. So nobody else in his school gets Scala yet. So, but he's getting into it. So when he watches this video, he's gonna be really mad at me because he's like, "What were you doing, Dad?" Yeah, embarrass him ahead of time. Okay, so the overall theme, there's kind of two things I want to talk about today, and see if we can come up with a way to demonstrate them. One of them is obviously that Scala being full stack has taken on a totally new meaning in the last few years, right? So some awesome work done by the community members to extend the reach of Scala from the JVM into the browser with Scala.js, and then more recently with Scala native, trying to actually get rid of the JIT work. JIT step. So that's been really exciting. I'm not going to talk about Scala native today, but we will talk about Scala.js. So my interest in this was because my previous startup, 100% based on Scala, took the bet back in 2011 when all of my friends laughed at me and said, "Hey, what are you doing taking this esoteric language and trying to build a company around it?" The company's successful, and you know, my estimate from all the previous projects I've done in my life and this 5.5-year experiment at that startup was the number of bugs was just so much lower than everything we were used to before. Took longer to bring things to production because you had to onboard developers, but just really high quality. So, however, the front end, the user interface, was not in any structured language, and you know, we're not going to do JavaScript bashing here because we're all kind of used to it. But the problem that I was having all morning trying to get this demo working was actually nothing to do with Scala, nothing to do with anything sane. It just had to do with JavaScript ecosystem being as messed up as it is. So hopefully one day that will improve, but in the meanwhile we have to suffer through. So in my previous startup, that was a huge problem because you know, we were fully structured, everything made a lot of sense on the server side, but you came into the client side, you had to be JavaScript. And we played with a lot of different frameworks, and it was hard. So then I was motivated that for the next big project I do, so my new company, that we're going to try to do Scala end-to-end. We're going to do Scala.js. And my experience so far with the Scala.js has been really good. Of course, so once in a while, JavaScript itself kind of leaks through the abstraction, and its ecosystem comes to get you. So that's one thing I want to talk about, like the end-to-end nature, and hopefully we get through a little bit of that code. The other thing is GraphQL. So my other pet peeve for many, many, many years was REST. I've never been a fan. It's always been one of those things where you spend so long trying to morph your brain into this one way of doing things, and then you add a few more, you need a few more APIs, and all of a sudden the whole thing just, you know, falls apart. So this is personal opinion. I tried, I just could never fall in love with it. So last few years, there's been interesting movement. Now, this is not, many of you have probably heard of this, called GraphQL. And the idea with GraphQL is that you describe your data as a kind of an interesting little schema. And you try to set it up so that different aspects of what your needs are around your, say, user interface or an API, right, can project down to some part of the graph that represents your schema. So it's not as powerful as other ways. It's not as, it's a little bit opinionated, but as you get more advanced in its usage, they've done some really good work with it. So part of the motivation for this came out of work done at Facebook. Of course, now it's open source. There's lots of really cool projects around it. So the project I'm going to be looking at with you here live is really cool service called GraphQL, graph.cool. And so I'll show you how kind of you can set up your schema, and then we'll use it live. But here's graphql.org. So you describe your data with some types and some relationships. And then you ask for just the subset of the data that you're looking for. So in this case, for example, I might say, hey, give me projects with this name and that tagline. And then my results come back in a JSON exactly the way that I described. Right? And so now the other thing interesting you can do here is you can compose these. Right? So this could be a subquery that gets embedded inside a larger query. So hopefully we'll see that in a second. And there's much more to be said about GraphQL. I really encourage you, if you ever end up needing to do especially user interface programming, especially programming where you want to have the user interface code actually be a real application, not just a bunch of gobbledygook in JavaScript. Take a look at it. I've been having a lot of fun with this. Okay, so now I said we're going to start with this. So this is GraphQL. It's a free. GraphQL is a managed GraphQL database service. Okay. Recently, that's become open source, so you can actually run this sort of a thing. There's 3 or 4 different open source ways of running this without needing to go across the internet to these guys. But I really like them. They have a really good support model, and there's a good community of people on Slack to get help. So the way this is structured for GraphQL, and I actually don't know anybody who works there, so it's not an advertisement for them. I've just been enjoying doing it. Is that you set up your schema, then I'll show you a couple of the other things. So the schema here, this is default. This like internals of the system. You don't have to worry about it. So what I wanted to do was to create a type. So we're going to create a type called post, and then later on we'll write some code in Scala-JS to go across the internet, hopefully, and get this Instagram post sort of service to work for us. So we're going to create this post here. So you'll see right away at the bottom. Can you guys see this okay? It's a little small? A little small. A little big? Is that okay? Good balance? Okay. So you'll see that as soon as I did that, this type annotation or type description came into the schema here. So what I want to do now is I want to say go add some fields. So let's say I call it the description field, and it's a string. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing doing it this way, but I just wanted to show you that that's all of this is doing. It's just giving a user interface behind it. So okay, so then what we'll do is we will go and fit all of that in. Okay, so we'll do this. Preview changes. Okay, actually before that, let me go and delete this. Okay, so while this is happening, how many people have played around with Scala.js so far? How many people who did not raise their hand do JavaScript coding or have ever had to do JavaScript coding? Okay, so you're my target audience. Okay. You're the guys who I need to impress. Okay, this is taking a bit of time. I'm not quite sure why, but we will come back to that. So I'm going to introduce now is a project that's my starter project here. It's called Scala.js React Interface. So obviously in the realm of the user interface, there's a bunch of things that you have to do to interface with the DOM, to interface with the rest of the world, right? You can't just stay inside your little Scala bubble, the Scala.js bubble. And so that forces you to kind of either say, okay, well, I'm going to natively program against the browser, or I'm going to use one of the frameworks. So Facebook did a great job with this framework a few years ago called React.js, and more recently with the React Native. And it's just been phenomenal advancement. Now, hopefully, these things have a life cycle to them. But so far, in my experience, that's been pretty nice system to work with. There's a lot of immutability concepts already built in. The difference between React is that React is a JavaScript-oriented framework, and React Native is a framework designed so that you can write your applications and present them inside a mobile phone, inside say an iOS phone or Android phone, as well as inside a web app. So write once, that's the vision, write once, and be able to retarget. And kind of works. It actually kind of, starting to actually work. So the iOS and the Android part have been working for a long time. The web part has been very tricky to get right in a nice, easy way, and that's starting to get better. So there's a community project called the Scala-JS React interface, which, as you can tell, takes Scala.js and provides the bindings to be able to use React Native through Scala.js. Right? So this is a really, really nice project. I'd highly encourage you guys to please start it. It's not my project. I hang out on the Gitter chat to help out here and there, but it's a really nice project by Chandra, who works out of India, and a few other people. And so it's very rich. I mean, it takes a while for me to even scroll down. There's actually a second page of repositories inside this GitHub project. And all of them almost are really nice, very nicely modular aspects of being able to interface with React Native and other things in the browser. Okay. There's also Giterate projects where you can get started pretty easily, and there's several examples. This particular community that's doing this Scala.js React interface is very, very small right now. So just as a word of warning, right, you're going to have to get your fingers dirty. But it's just done well. It's done really well, and I'm hoping that this conversation today actually encourages you to give it a shot and actually contribute to the community as well. Okay, so let's see. How many times do you have to click you're deleting this post? I think he died. So let's go here. Okay, it's gone. Okay, so we're gonna come in here. We're gonna add our post model here. Apply changes. Okay, and then let's go into the playground here. And what that lets you do is just lets you insert into the actually any kind of mutation you want to do, any kind of queries you want to do, just play with them before you put them in the code. So I had this one already ready. And this one is creating a post, which is what we just created the schema type for a post and filling in a couple of fields. So we're just going to play that. We're going to come out here. We're going to look at data under post. And you'll see now there's an entry. So that's what we just did. Okay, so now that we have introduced very, very quickly GraphQL, we've introduced this project that I'm going to be using to hopefully do some coding here. And then we've seen a visual way of setting up your GraphQL schema. I'd like to now switch to actually looking at this more closely. Okay, so this project, I will publish it because it's the first project that I found that, I did not find a single ready-made starter project that had both the iOS, Android, as well as web worked out for React Native with Scala.js. So once I clean it up, I will publish it, and hopefully it'll get listed somewhere in a couple days as part of the proceedings of this conference. So watch out for that. But it is based on a starter project, and that one I will leave a pointer for as well. So the way that these things are organized, right? All of these, I don't know if it's very hard to see, but I will zoom in on the code on the left in the project bar here. It's very hard to see, but all of this is just traditional. You'll recognize it as traditional Scala, Java way of doing things. So you got source main, Scala, and then our packages, which I'll start to go through. But on the outer side here, on the outside, right, there's a bunch of things that are more traditionally JavaScript. So there's an assets folder, right, with some JavaScripts already put in here. So this is a JavaScript library that I've imported. These are outputs that are going to be used by our iOS app and our web app. I don't have an Android test here to show you. But that's the output that gets generated by the Scala.js I guess compiler or transpiler. And okay, and then also you'll see things that, again, like that we as Scala people kind of tend to hate. There's these JSON files that are setting up how the JavaScript side, the React side of the project is going to be set up. There's nastiness in here that is just horrible stuff. But you gotta, you know, if you're gonna do user interface programming, you have to do JavaScript. Ultimately, you have to compile down to JavaScript, and you have to play with you have to interact with all the libraries. So this comes with the territory, but it's horrible stuff. Okay, and then you'll see, you know, index.js. You know, in this particular case, all it's doing is thankfully not, you know, it's just importing our output JavaScript file here. So there's other things in here that are needed by the JavaScript part of the world, and of course we have our build.sbt. So you'll see here in all the example apps, right, the triple% is the Scala.js way of having the library, the Scala.js version of the libraries being pulled in. And then very nice, Scala.js React interface is very nicely modularized. So you have the core that's separated from the mobile and the web, which is really nice. And then the universal components being split up from web-specific components, the web routing being split out from other routing, and so on. So it takes a little while to get it set up. If you're trying to do both a native, React Native iOS Android app as well as a web app from the same code base. It takes a little bit of time to finesse this and get it quite right. But I'll publish this project for folks to get started. Okay. One really, really nice thing that Chandra did is he created a platform plugin for Scala.js React interface, which is what this free project is. And so a lot of the complexity that we used to have in these SPT files now is taken care of by that plugin. So it's starting to become really nice. Okay, so let's get into it. So what we're going to do is we are going to look at our core main file here, which is, I just didn't rename it. It's mobile app, but in fact it's actually for both mobile and the web stack, and you'll see that in a second. So just like normal, you know, we have an object, and then we have, in this case, it's a main. We need a main, at least the way that Scala.js React interface works. That's the thing that gets executed by the JavaScript runtime once you load it in. Okay, so that's how it finds it. So right at the top, you can see that one of the plugins here, the free platform plugin, has a function which is an is web or is iOS or is Android, and so that's our first fork point here. If you are doing a web, if this code is executing in context of the web, we want to render to the DOM. We're going to pick up an element in our HTML page, which is really just a shell called app, and that's where we're going to inject ourselves. And the thing we're going to inject into it is something I've added in this project called web root, just some modifications to existing starter projects. So let's take a look at, so is this clear so far? What's happening here? Yeah. Right, this is if you see any kind of you know, even JavaScript environments where you're trying to insert an SVG, you know, you find one of the DOM elements by its ID and you inject yourself into it. So that's what that is. Okay, and then the rest here is the non-web part. So my hope is that as this evolves, that we'll be able to actually combine the two into one. It's almost there, but there's a few little problems that are preventing that from actually working. And again, it's actually JavaScript side. It's not Scala.js at all. So eventually we should be able to just get rid of this is web and then play with the DOM directly. Instead, we should be able to just play with directly our bindings against React Native and have common code even at this layer, but it's just not, at least I couldn't make it work. Okay, so in this else here, you'll see the app on this side right now that I'm going to demonstrate is the stock app. It doesn't have the GraphQL modifications that I'm going to show you on the website. So, but all this is happening. All that's happening here is that there's a navigation functionality that React Native provides that we have built bindings for, or Chandra has built bindings for in SRI. Okay. So we'll come back to the iOS one in a second. Let's focus on the web one. So obviously the core function, the important function here is web.root. So let's go and I'm just doing Command B in IntelliJ and we'll go straight there. So this root is made up of it's a routing wrapper, and if you've ever done any UI programming, you're aware, and I'm not a big UI programmer actually, but you're going to try to have some sort of a router so that things like history works, forward, back works, but also that it links between different parts of your app work. So and that's what this is. So in app routes here, we've registered a screen, and so let me actually show you the imports here first, so you'll see there's no magic here. So Chandra's Sri web router code is just creating bindings for the underlying React routers. Okay, so that's all this is, right? Most of the code is actually JavaScript. This is just the facade that's been created here. Okay, so here we've registered a screen called posts, and there's some not found 404s and some other code here, which we ignore for a minute. And so this is the key thing. So let's go to post screens. We're going to zoom in there. Okay, and then in post screens, a couple of things are going on. First of all, post screens is the shell that will draw our page, or our app, basically. It's the outermost thing here. And you'll see this query renderer in here. So this is the GraphQL query system and the Scala-JS bindings for it. Right? This is brilliant. Like, imagine doing this coding in JavaScript, right? I mean, one little typo and you're going to be all over the place. But the fact that we can use our the full capabilities of a typed facade are really useful. And so if you're wondering what query renderer is, tap onto it, and here's the definition of query renderer. And that just makes coding for complicated things like this pretty easy. And so the query renderer is just, again, it's ultimately always going to go and call some JavaScript, but at least you'll see what types are being used and so on, and how you have to pass in what the returns are and so on. Okay, so we're back to post screen here, and ignore a bunch of this, right? I mean, so relay.environment, actually maybe I'll just show you. Relay.environment here is just setting up our ability to communicate on the network, getting the right HTTP library integrated, and so on, right? So that's just a fetch function here. Again, pretty common if you've done UI programming or JavaScript programming. Okay, so this is the most interesting thing here, which is the GraphQL thingy. So one day we will have proper bindings for GraphQL to be integrated directly into ScalaJS. But right now, that's just not, it's just like the way GraphQL gets compiled inside React Native in the normal world before you take the leap onto ScalaJS. That's not how it works. So there's been discussions about trying to make a proper facade for this, but so far nobody's done that. And so the way that this works is that there's actually a macro that looks for the tag GraphQL. Actually, let me show you. You'll see here, right? So that tag then gets macro expanded and converted into a query that gets stored, which then the JavaScript side of the world, the GraphQL JavaScript components then convert, and we get models out of it back, and I'll show you what those models look like. So this is the part that is, like, again, nasty. Ideally, in the next year or two, hopefully once this stuff settles down, we'll have a really nice abstraction for this. But what this is showing is, hey, there is a GraphQL query. It's called this. And there's a viewer, and every query in the Facebook way of doing GraphQL has a viewer section. And then this ... is saying that we're going to insert a different fragment of a query inside it. The nice thing then is that the higher level post screen shell does not actually contain the query details that are needed to actually show things. Those will be coming from the next component down in the user interface. So this here is the next component down. Again, really nice to be able to do this in Scala syntax. So here we're just doing some error checking. Once this query gets executed and returns, which you can ignore for a minute, and then we draw and return the post list component. So somehow this has to get filled in, and the next component has to get drawn on the screen. So let's look at post list. Post list here is just like in most things in React Native, you have a render function, and you'll see our div tags here. This odd looking thing is actually just a library that has provided a symbol so that you don't get collisions from other normal Java or Scala code that you might be writing. So, and also kind of really cleanly identifies that you're actually dealing with a DOM tag. So this is a div tag here and some styling on it. And then, so for some reason, IntelliJ gets confused about this particular thing. I've tried it like, if I add a dot as instance of, okay, so this is the live coding part, the scary part. React node. I think, yeah, okay, then it goes away. It should just grab it, because once you expand it, it just somehow gets confused. Right? This is one of the few things that this gets confused by. Well, otherwise, IntelliJ has been really great. Okay, so this is defining a div tag, and then then if you look down here, this here is the post viewer fragment of the GraphQL query that we saw up here. So we said, okay, please insert the post viewer here in this post screen file. And now once we actually go to the post list component, you'll see, hey, there's a fragment post viewer that gets pulled in. Okay, so now there's another component that's going to get pulled in here. We ignore that for a minute. And so this here is a GraphQL query. Already you can maybe kind of start to see that there is this kind of nested thing going on here, where each component describes. So this is the post list component. So you can imagine an Instagram list that's going to get drawn out by this component. But this component here, the list, which is composed of multiple different items, is defined by like this. So the nice thing is that, let's say in the future you change your mind, you say, look, I don't want just ID for that node that I'm going to get here. In fact, I want the description as well, or something like that, right? So you just add it here. You don't have to go somewhere else. Each component then becomes its own maintainable unit. So there's another fragment that's pulled in here called post data, and so you say, okay, well, what's going on here? So the way that the post list is being drawn is, okay, ignore this stuff. It's going to be hard to quickly go over it. But this, but I will talk about it in just a second. So there's an array here that's being mapped, and then so that's the results that are coming back from the query. Okay, and these are the edges, and we'll see that in a second. And then we map over them, and then we create a post. So obviously that's in the new UI component that's going to get drawn, and that's the one that corresponds to post data here. So let's go take a look at that. So this is the post object, and here there's the final image being drawn from the query results that have an image URL in them, as well as a description. So this is the final thing, the innermost post details that are going to get rendered on the screen, as this is like hierarchically composed. And of course, right away you'll see that there is this post data query fragment that is sitting here. Okay, so to make the React Native world, the GraphQL world, and the Scala.js world, the trade-offs in the Scala.js React interface library, or set of libraries, is that all of these queries are compiled and converted into Scala models. Okay, and that's really, really, really powerful. So post data, right, on this post here with ID, image URL, and description has corresponding, you must have noticed it here, elements here. So let's go look at models.post. So this file here, it's hard to see, but it's called GraphQL models.scala. That file is automatically generated by the tools that come with Scala.js React interface. And so this is automatically generated. Again, as you're coding, you have the ability to take this untyped, unstructured messed up world on the other side of the JavaScript, and we can put some structure around it. So this trait that got automatically generated, it has all of the elements that we created in our schema. Okay, that happened not magically, it was just a script that ran, so right here. Right. So we had all these things.
What happens when you add something to this schema?
So okay, great questions. So when I add something to this schema, should I do it?
Yes.
Okay. Danger. Okay, so what's going to happen? Well, let's see. Will this work? Oh, no. The field danger must specify the migration directive because its type was changed or it has become required. Okay. So let's go and create it here. Add type. I must have made a mistake. Danger. Oops, no, not that. Cancel that. Post add field. Danger. String. Create field. Okay, so now we have that. Oh, the mistake I made was I made it required, but I didn't do a migration path, right? Because it wasn't required before, so that would be a schema problem. So this should work. Okay, so what's going to happen now is that, let's see. So can you see this? Okay. So there's a script that I showed you very briefly that did the conversion, which I will show you again before I run it. Oh, it's not in our list anymore. Okay, so let's go grab it. This is when I was feigning disgust, right here, this thing. So this is an NPM package, okay, to which you give this URL, which is the URL that I have for my remote location of my schema that just got updated, okay? And then there is, and it spits out into a GraphQL file, which then we pick up and take another NPM package, which converts that into Scala and spits it into this location, which is where we were looking at the posts file. So here, a second ago, this file that's auto-generated came from that nasty little piece of code. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to now execute that code. Okay, all right, worked. Let's see what damage it did. Okay, so now we come back here. This just got, you saw it refreshed. Okay, so that got updated. So now we look for danger. Danger, it's there. Okay, so all the associated properties, associated filters, associated traits, basically. Well, these are filters, and then somewhere down there will be a trait or a field, I guess. Yeah. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so now if we were to actually be so bold, we would go into one of our files and we would say, hey, you know, this is dangerous. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah? Okay. Did that answer your question?
It didn't compile.
Oh,
But yeah, you did that.
yeah, not sure why that is actually. That's kind of odd because they're both strings.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, maybe afterwards we can go figure it out. There's just a mismatch, huh?
This is required and the other is not required.
It was
It-
wrapped into some option or something.
There is an option.
Right. So let's go look at this. Models.post. Models.post does have danger and undef. Yes, so I've got to unwrap it. Thank you. You actually got it spot on. Yes, yes. Okay, and so there's a clean way of pulling the string out of the undef. Yes.
So you
Just option. Just fold it. Yeah.
So you're building a model. Your model has a new field, and you can use it in your components.
Yes.
But you didn't update the query to fetch that new field. It will be empty always because you're not fetching that field at all.
That's right. So to be able to go all the way with this, we would have to come here and actually add danger there. And otherwise, it won't be populated. Like it'll be on the Scala side as that undef, but nothing from GraphQL is going to actually be populating it.
Right.
So it'll just be empty.
Sort of tooling that tells us that, hey, you're not fetching.
I think for required ones, I think that should complain when on the mismatch. Maybe afterwards when we can actually try that out and see what fails. Okay, all right, so hopefully you can start to get the hang of kind of how this stuff works. So where were we? We were looking at the post. We started off at post list. Okay, so maybe we should see if this now runs and does not complain. Okay, so we were able to, so this is again the JavaScript part of the world. So we were able to compile, not just the Scala side, but all the rest of it. And then we're going to go in here and let's see if we can look at the data in our post, make sure everything looks fine, and that's null is allowed. This is fine. Okay, so now we're going to, oh, there you go. So that's the image that we had put in there, right? So just to, thank you. So now to prove that that is exactly the way it should be, we're going to go in here, we're going to run that a second time, supercar number 2, and then we're going to come back to our application, and we should see 2. All right, so this is working. Okay. So end to end, right, Scala.js, bound by, or using React Native facades. This is a React Native application running inside the browser, using GraphQL to get data from a remote location, but do it in a way that's nicely structured so that each unit composes, and there's no like big query that you have to go and deal with. The alternative to the GraphQL way of doing this here would have been the little field that I modified. I would have changed everything, right? It would have been one massive query that was somewhere that I'd have to go and change. So that's really nice to not have to do that. Okay, and then so like I said, right, the same code base has the iOS as well as the web part. We've been looking at the web part. Let me quickly show you the iOS part. So this is my SBT window here. If I pause that for a second, you'll see that I'm continuously compiling the iOS dev target as well as the web dev target. The web dev target is the one that we just, when we added danger to our models, we recompiled both the dev and the iOS versions, but we haven't looked at the iOS version. So the iOS version is running in a simulator. So the way that works is that once you have once you want to test, you go in and run this command called React Native run iOS, which I've already done, and that brings up your simulator. So here's our simulator for iOS, for the iPhone, and so if I reload it, you'll see that that actually runs. And to prove that this is real, I can come in here and now switch over to the iOS part of this application and change something so that we can prove that this is real. List view style render list view universal components. Where is this? Here we go. Okay, so well, first let's prove that this is actually working. So we say who's demo here and save it. And we should see. Okay, recompilation happened, and we should see that recompile. Okay, so it's working, right? Agreed? At least the code path is recompiling. Okay, so before today's demo, I was not able to do the GraphQL part of the iOS app. I was not able to get it done. There wasn't enough good documentation, so I kind of mostly got it there, but not all the way. So my hope was that what I'd be showing here was a single code base doing GraphQL both for iOS as well as for web. We saw web, but the way this was supposed to structure was when you clicked here, you would see a list of posts the way that you saw for the web app, but that's not working. Probably a few more hours, we'll be able to figure that out. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things. Thoughts, comments? So my target audience, so the folks who currently do JavaScript but don't use Scala.js, for the web at least, like forget the iOS part. What do you guys think? Questions? Thoughts? Yes.
I've tried pitching this to my team many times.
Yes.
Using Scala.js.
Yeah.
So I've tried trying to propose Scala.js instead of using just JavaScript.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns that comes up with is performance and overhead of using Scala libraries. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So the way that I'm doing it, I'm not using Scala libraries, right? I'm trying to use as much as possible React Native, and that's, for people willing to do React Native, that's what you have. So the components are run-of-the-mill React Native components, like all of the components that you see here, right? They're not Scala. They're actually JavaScript underneath the surface, right? So the amount of Scala code that you're actually writing, first of all, it's not going to be too much in the UI. It's going to be in the logic. Okay. So, and that will be a little bit slower because you are actually, you're transpiling from Scala to another language. So it's going to be a little bit slower. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 30% slower. The question is, in your app, what percentage of the time is being spent in that, and then how much time are you spending, right? And the nice thing about doing this in Scala.js is that you write your application the way you would write a backend application or a server application, right? You have proper, if you're doing object orientation, you have proper object orientation. Otherwise, you have nice structures. You have, the way different parts of your app interact, right, is very nicely clean. Yeah, so it's just like, it's amazing writing user interface apps that are as clean in architecture and in design. So I'm willing to take a little bit of that hit for that developer productivity, and then being able to, JavaScript is kind of closer to write once sort of thing, so this is not.
How about the size of the app itself? Like, does this include the Scala library, for example, in your?
So over the last 3 or 4 years, the dead code elimination has gotten really good. Your overall sizes for apps, it's not like, most people on their web app, at least, that's where this size is a concern, right? It's always funny, you go to the home page, there's like this big animation that's running in the background, and then we're running about 6 kilobytes in the JavaScript app. So it is going to be bigger, but again, it's part of the trade-offs. What do we do? One final, there was a question, one final one maybe? No? Okay.
It wasn't really a question, it was, I've been involved in a project to build on top of a CMS some React code, and the React people seem to not care that whether or not their React application is loaded on pages that it is never going to be used on. And I'm sitting here, that doesn't make sense. You want to have the load as simple as possible for each page. And they say, well, it's still 28K. And so it's like, that's, they're forcing the client to load more than they needed to look at individual pages. So there's still a lot of optimization needs to go on in the React community.
It's gotten better. It's getting better. The dead code elimination is getting really nice, and
right.
it's just getting better. Honestly, I wouldn't not do it for those reasons anymore. That is current as of a year ago. I wouldn't do it for those reasons.
The point was that each React application was loaded on every page.
Okay, right, got it.
Really quick question. When are you releasing your React native application, like in production, Android and iOS?
There are lots and lots and lots of applications that are in production.
Scala.js, React Native.
There's a couple of those out there. There's not that many yet. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.